we are going to get actually started. Thank you to everybody who are taking an hour and change, hopefully nothing more, to spend some time with us to go over the summit, what to bring, what to wear, what we're going to be advocating for, etc., etc. So our agenda today, it's nice. We're going to talk about preparation for your trip to DC. We're going to go over some frequently asked questions that we got from our 2 webinars last year, and some questions that we got from the webinar an hour and a half ago. We're going to go over the logistics, since everybody will be traveling to DC, how to get where you need to go. We're going to go over the schedule of what to expect, and we're going to quickly go over the legislative priorities. For those of us who don't have access to sound, there is I guess you can't really hear me telling you this, but we're going to type it out. But if you're with somebody or know somebody who's maybe texting you or emailing you saying they don't have sound, there's usually a button when you first log in that says use computer audio. You have to click that button first. But we'll handle that through chat. But I'm getting a few people who are having some sound issues. Anyway, the most important thing to remember for this webinar is that if you have a question, there is a 100% chance that somebody else listening to me right now has the same question. So do not hesitate to ask. If you do have a question, there's a little chat box in the bottom left or right-hand corner. And if you don't see it, it's being hidden by a button that should be in the bottom left or right-hand corner. And that question will be sent just to Drew and I. So if you feel like a question is silly and you don't want to ask, first of all, don't worry, because you are not the only person to be having that question. You're just the only person who is willing to share it. So you are helping the entire group by asking any question you may have. There will be a few points throughout this webinar where we're going to have some question breaks. So even if we move on from something and you still have a question, type it in, and when we get to our next question break, or depending on what we're talking about, if we get a flood of questions, we'll stop and address it right there. So this year and always, we're so excited to have you join us in DC. This organization was founded as an advocacy organization, and we cannot do this without you. And we can't do what we're trying to do in Congress without bringing in people like you who are so passionate and care so much. This year, I'm really proud to announce that we have over 120 advocates coming in. That's more from last year, and last year was, in my opinion, our biggest and best summit ever. Last year was my first one. This year we have 43% new advocates, which means we did a phenomenal job of heeding our Count Me In campaign from after the summit to spread the word to your friends and family, to let them know who we are, what we do, and that we need more people to be brought in the fold. So thank you for doing that. And our hotel room block is full, which when we asked for extra space, we weren't sure if we even needed it. We just wanted to be safe, and it turns out we absolutely needed it. So real quickly, I want to go over our expectations of you as an advocate. Remember, the most important thing to remember is that you're an ambassador to zero, and your conduct on the Hill will reflect whether congressional staffers in their offices are willing to meet with Drew and I in the future. And in order to do that, in order to be able to meet with them, to be able to talk about the priorities, to be able to help champion research funding, we just need you to remember that and follow some of these other expectations, which is consider every meeting on your schedule to be mandatory unless we otherwise specify it. We'll go over the optional parts in a couple seconds. But the biggest thing a congressional office remembers about a group is whether their advocates actually made it. And so we don't want to be one of the organizations where they know that our advocates did not show up to the meeting. Last year, for the first time, we had no advocates miss a meeting, and we completely intend on repeating that. Please remember to arrive at your scheduled meetings on time, prepared and dressed in professional attire. We'll go over dress in a couple minutes. And this is really important, especially with how things are in the country right now. Please refrain from sharing your personal political opinions during our meetings on Capitol Hill. Prostate cancer knows no political affiliation, no party. It is bipartisan, it is nonpartisan. And that is why that we have had such success advocating for what we do, is because we are here to talk about prostate cancer, and that is it. So before you leave, a frequently asked question I get, and Drew gets, is how should we dress for the summit? And each day is a little bit different. Sunday, we ask that you, well, we really don't ask. On Sunday, you come in completely casual, wear whatever you'd like. We recognize that you have a long flight, maybe a short flight, but most of you have long flights all the way from the other side of the country. Monday is business casual. Jeans are totally fine. Tuesday is the day where things are a little bit more professional. We would like you to wear suits, dress pants, shirt and tie, dresses, skirts and blouses. If you're not a tie person, don't worry, you don't have to wear a tie. But the most important thing to remember is to bring comfortable shoes. There is a lot of walking on Capitol Hill. So remember to bring comfortable shoes. And remember, again, you represent zero. Another question we get is, what's the weather going to be like? And to be honest, all of these bullets really just mean that we don't know. There's really no way to know. This morning it was absolutely freezing, and this weekend it was 70 degrees, and there's just no way to know. So I would bring an umbrella and be prepared for everything. A good question real quick is a sport coat okay? Yes, it's okay. Thank you for asking that question. Another thing to bring to the Hill, remember, comfortable shoes, because there is a lot of walking, and you don't want your feet to hurt by the end of the day. That just makes the whole experience miserable for you, and I don't want you to do that. And another good thing is to bring your own business cards. Contact information for follow-ups, very important. We'll get into that a little bit later, but you want to use these opportunities to meet your member of Congress and their staff, or just their staff, which is arguably better, and start a dialogue so that they know who you are. But we'll get into that in a bit. When flying into D.C., most people are flying into Reagan or Dulles. 99% of you are flying into Reagan. That is about a mile from the hotel. There's a free shuttle, leaves every half hour from the hotel to the airport and the hotel. Information on the shuttle was in the packet that you should have received on Friday via email with your pre-arrival packet and reading materials. Otherwise, you can take the metro, you could take a taxi, or just like last year, we have partnered with Lyft, a ride-sharing app for your smartphone, where if you have not used Lyft before, you can download the app, LYFT, and under the promo codes, if you use ZeroSummit18, you get a discount on your rides, I believe $5 off your first 5 rides or something like that, and Zero gets a small donation from Lyft. So if you have not used Lyft, highly recommend it. It's a great service, and you will make your presence in D.C. go a little bit further for the organization. If you're flying into Dulles, it's a little bit further. There's always Lyft, a taxi service to the metro. But the best way to go is that there's a bus that leaves from the airport to the metro station, and then from there you can take a metro that'll take you pretty close to the hotel, and then you can hop off, transfer onto the other side of the tracks, and you will get to the hotel. You'll get within a block of the hotel. For some of you that live on the East Coast, you'll be taking the train into D.C. Union Station. Again, the best way to get to the hotel would be to use a taxi or that Lyft code. Otherwise, you're welcome to use the Metro, which will save a little bit of money. That you take the red line, get off at Metro Center, then transfer to the blue line, and you'll get off at the station that is a block from the hotel. The hotel this year is the Westin Crystal City. We were there a few years back, and I heard great things, so we wanted to get you back there. I think it's in a better location than last year, so I think you're really going to like it. I sent confirmations out to everybody last week with your room assignments. Some people have emailed me that theirs were incorrect. Thank you so much for doing that. If you see an error on your hotel room confirmation, please reply to the email and let me know what the mistake is. There's a chance that there was just a mistake with the email or that the spreadsheet is wrong. So I can't know that there's an issue without you telling me. When you get to the hotel, I would first check in. You'll receive your welcome bag at the front desk. For those of us who are driving in, you'll get your parking pass there. The hotel will collect your credit card information for everybody. For those who Zero's paying for their rooms, they'll collect it for incidentals, so you'll get all that money back unless you destroy your room. Otherwise, if you're paying for your own hotel room, and thank you so much for doing that and helping us be able to bring in somebody from around the country, they'll collect your credit card information there and give you a bill upon checkout. Transportation to Capitol Hill, we will provide a bus that'll leave from the hotel at 7:45 and 8 a.m. on the day that'll drop us off on the Hill by your first meetings, and afterwards the bus will pick us up from the reception on the Hill and bring us back to the hotel. So let's get into some questions that we got after our webinar last year. For instance, I have not received my airline itinerary. Have they been emailed? The answer to that is if you booked your flight through us, then once that was confirmed, you should have got an email with your itinerary and your tickets, etc. If you did not get that, email me and I will take care of it. Some airlines charge for bags. It's our policy at Zero that we don't cover bag fees from the airlines just for hardship, but if it is an issue for you, please reach out to me. We'll be happy to help in any way we can. And if you're driving, can we get a parking pass? As I mentioned, yes. If you're driving, we'll have parking passes available. You should have got an email from me. If you did get a parking pass, you should get an email from me today that gave you the details of how to obtain the parking pass. If you didn't get an email from me and you want a parking pass, just let me know. We still have spots left for you. And will the packet you sent in an email be printed and given to the advocates in their registration packet, or should we print it before attending? We're going to have printed copies of a lot of things for you, including that, and you'll pick that up when you register at the registration table, the Zero registration table, on Sunday or Monday morning. So this is the first section. We're going to stop for questions. Feel free to ask questions in the little chat box. If you remember, there are no dumb questions. If you are thinking of anything and are not sure, odds are that someone else of the 58 people in the room are also thinking that. So we're going to pause for about 30 seconds and let people ask some questions. So a good question we just got is for those who are driving in and are not staying at the hotel. If you are in that boat, what you will do is once you get to the hotel, You can get your parking pass at the registration table on the second floor of the hotel, and then from there you'll be able to park your car under the hotel in their garage. For those of us who are flying through BWI, there's a percentage of you that are flying through Baltimore. That airport is also very good. It's about the same distance away as Dulles. There is a train. There's a MARC train that goes right by the airport. There's a little shuttle to the train. That train costs $7, and that'll take you to Union Station, where you'll be able to utilize the lift there. Otherwise, you can take a lift straight from the hotel if you'd like. It's about a 20-minute ride, 25-minute ride. For another good question is for the people who are arriving a little later on Sunday. That is not a problem at all. Some people are arriving as late as 5 in the afternoon, especially if you're from the Texas area or the West Coast area. We'll go over schedule right after this, but again, that is completely fine. And in order for the flights to even have been booked, I had to approve them anyway, so it's fine. A good question was asked that I said our room block is full, and the fundraising incentives end tomorrow, or fundraising for incentives ends tomorrow. However, if you hit the threshold to get your own hotel room before the end of the day tomorrow, I'm happy to make sure that you can get your own room on our block. But I will take care of it. But you just focus on doing that fundraising. All right, moving on. And again, if you think of something relating to logistics and you have a question, feel free to type it. We will go back. There is not a problem doing that. So Sunday the 25th, we are changing up the dates of the summit this year, as you obviously know by now. We're starting on a Sunday. That gives you guys an extra day to not have to take off work, and I think flying on Sunday is a little bit easier anyway. At noon on Sunday is when the registration table opens. You'll be able to register any time between noon and honestly probably 9 p.m., 7 p.m. On Sunday. So registration will open, and we'll be getting everything ready. 4 o'clock is when our soft welcome and advocate-led roundtables will begin. The advocate-led roundtables are something new we're doing this year. Drew's going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. And again, for those people who are coming in a little bit later, it's not a problem that you'll be missing part of these. We understand that the more important thing is that you get here, and that you get here safely, and that you can be a part of the Hill meetings and the training. At 5:30, we're going to have dinner on our own. There is a lot of restaurants within walking distance. Last year, the hotel was kind of in an island, on an island, and this hotel is down the street from a lot of great restaurants. Happy to give recommendations. So that'll be an hour and a half. And then this year what we're doing a little differently is at 7 o'clock we're going to have some optional entertainment. And this is the part of the schedule that you are welcome to join us for, or if you had a long day of traveling and you want to go to bed a little bit earlier because there's an early day tomorrow, we totally understand. We're going to start with some remarks and comedy by Ian Mayer. Ian Mayer is an author from Pennsylvania who wrote a book called Laughing with Cancer about how he used humor to help cope with the extremely emotional and trying time of a prostate cancer diagnosis. He's a really funny guy, and I think a lot of us, if not all of us, will be able to relate to what he has to say in some way, shape, or form. And then afterwards, we'll be hosting a screening of a documentary that was made by one of our new advocates, Londi Maduro, and the documentary is called The Silent Killer, Prostate Cancer in the African American Community. After we screen the movie, we'll have a short Q&A with Londi, talk a little bit about how she learned about prostate cancer as an issue and how her father was diagnosed with prostate cancer while she was making this movie, and all the information she was able to share with him was because she was making this movie and was learning. So Drew, advocate-led roundtables.
Yeah, so as Matt said, we are doing something a little different this year, and on Sunday evening, we're going to have what we're calling advocate-led roundtables, and really, this is supposed to be an informal time for you guys to catch up with the people you maybe haven't seen since last year, for new people to get to know others, and really to talk about the topics that are of interest to you. The feedback that we got last year was that you wanted more time to socialize with each other and to get to know each other, and so that's what this hour and a half after Jamie's soft welcome is for. So up on the screen right now, what you'll see are some potential topics: genetics, genomics, how to talk to other men, some peer-to-peer, losing a loved one, our molecular profiling program, what it's like on Capitol Hill. So that'd be a good one for maybe some first-time people who might be nervous. How to start a local support group, what's the best way to support a man, clinical trials experience, and how to do your own zero fundraiser. So what I'd like you to do right now, or even in the next day or so, is tell me if any of these topics are something that you might want to lead. We do have leaders for some of them so far, but also tell me if you don't see a topic up here that you think would be really good for advocates to discuss and talk amongst yourselves about. So again, it's going to be an informal time. We'll have a bunch of roundtables set up. We'll have some leaders, but really it's just conversation, getting to know each other. Feel free to float around the room to different topic areas, or to introduce and catch up with people as you see and meet them. And it should be a good time. It should help everyone warm up to each other prior to that long day in the sessions on Monday. So again, we listened to your feedback. We did this for you. I hope it works out. But again, please send me any ideas that you may have of topics that might be missing, or if you really feel strongly about a topic and would like to potentially be the leader and moderator, please get in touch with me as well.
And we will, when we send out the recording and the slides to this webinar, I'll also paste this list separately, so that way you can reply to the email with your feedback on some of the topics if you don't have it in front of you. All right, moving on. So Monday, the education and training day. That is, it's a long, jam-packed day that I think Drew did a really great job of getting a lot more topics and people involved that I think will do very well, and I think you'll really enjoy it. So we're going to start at 7:30 with breakfast and late registration. If you get in on Sunday and you either forget to register or you get here and the no one's at the table or anything like that, no worries. You can register again in the morning on Monday. At 8 a.m., we're going to start our program with a welcome and countdown to zero, where we're going to go over some of the impact we've had on prostate cancer in the federal government and some of the state government. After that, Drew is going to review our policy agenda, which will go over in much greater detail, minimal greater detail here, and a lot greater detail in the packet that you received on Friday with the memos. And then we're going to talk about the research highlights from the Prostate Cancer Research Program at the Department of Defense and the National Institutes of Health. And we're gonna flag that and go over that more times, because what we noticed in this past year from going on the Hill was that people or members of Congress and staff don't fully understand the difference between what the Prostate Cancer Research Program does and what the National Institutes of Health, or NIH, does. So we're going to work very hard on being able to explain the difference of the two, and we're going to go over that in a little bit greater detail for you in a minute. But I just wanted to flag that as a theme that we're going to be working towards to help us on the Hill. Now we're going to move into the section that we've called Who We're Fighting For. At 9:40, we're going to have a couple great patient speakers that we've partnered with that I think will be able to give a little bit more color about their experience and the importance of what we're doing. And then at 10 a.m., we're going to have our keynote speaker. Our keynote speaker this year is Glenn Consor. He's the play-by-play announcer for the Washington Wizards the past 11 years. He's also a prostate cancer survivor. And I think he's going to have a very interesting take on being diagnosed with prostate cancer while working in the NBA, which, as you know, is an organization made up of predominantly, if not mostly, men. So after that, we're going to move into our What We're Fighting For section. At 10:30, we're gonna have a panel discussing promising drug therapy data from 2017 for high-risk groups and earlier use. At noon, we're going to break for lunch, and then we're going to have a working lunch where we'll be discussing emerging technologies and biomarkers. So that will be panels talking about new guidelines on genetic testing and counseling, the differences between genetics and genomics, because it's incredibly confusing and I didn't know what the difference was when I first heard of it. And then using genetics to prevent repeat biopsies, which saves lives and money. And then at 2:15, we're going to go into our breakout sessions. We're doing that a little bit differently than we've done in the past. Last year we had 4 breakout sessions and 2 sets of 4 different breakout sessions, meaning we had 8 breakout sessions. And we got your feedback after the event, and what we're doing this year is we're going to have 3 breakout sessions, of which they repeat at 3:30, so that instead of only getting 2 out of 8, you're going to get 2 out of 3. And then our hope is that we're going to have the 3rd one that you miss recorded, so that you can go back and make sure that you can take advantage of all the great information that is shared at the summit. And then we're going to move into how we're fighting. At 4:35 or so, Congressman Mo Brooks from Alabama is going to join us for some remarks. Congressman Brooks was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2017, and he made a very emboldened and impassioned floor speech talking about how early detection saved his life. And so that, as you know, is the reason we're here and what we advocate for. So he's going to come meet everybody. And then Drew's going to recap our policy agenda, and then we're going to break into some pointers on how to tell your story in Congress, because as we'll go over in a bit, the meetings are 20 to 30 minutes max, and you really want to be able to boil down your personal story into 2 minutes in clear and concise fashion that echoes why you have a personal connection to what we're here to talk about in the meetings, which is our legislative asks, which we'll go over in a minute. Then afterwards, we're gonna talk about what to expect in your meetings. We're gonna do some role play. We're gonna do some questions to make sure, especially for you folks who are new, all 43% of you, that you are very comfortable and ready, and you know your group, and you understand the asks, and you are ready to meet with Hill staffers the next day. And then afterwards, we're gonna have some closing remarks, and we're going to adjourn hopefully by 6. On Tuesday, which is our Hill Day, we're going to start a little bit earlier to get you guys enough time to sit down and have a nice breakfast and be able to ask any final questions to any of the Zero staff that you may have about your groups, your meetings, or whatever. At 7:45 and 8, the buses are going to leave for Capitol Hill, and again, we'll be providing those buses. From 9 to 5:30 will be your Hill meetings. You'll be running around all day from congressional offices on the House and the Senate, as well as the Capitol. And lunch on that day is on your own. There's cafeterias in almost all of the buildings on the Hill, and there's also a street on Pennsylvania Avenue where you'll be able to buy lunch from a restaurant if you have enough time. And then from 5:30 to 7:30, we'll have our Hill reception. That'll be in the Rayburn House office building, which if you've been here before is the same building we had it in last year, but a different room. And if you're new, then it's a congressional building. And spouses or anyone who came to you to D.C. but didn't partake in the meetings are more than welcome to come. If you have a friend in the area you couldn't see, you're more than welcome to invite them. The more the merrier. And then at 7:30, the buses will depart back for the Hill. So let's go over some frequently asked questions that we got last year. What about security? Is there anything that we shouldn't bring? So in the House and Senate buildings, the big thing is that you can't bring any weapons of any kind. No knives, no firearms. If you go into the Capitol building, which is different and it's roped, it has a second set of security, you're not allowed to bring in any food or liquids of any kind unless it's for a medical reason. And if you're worried about that, feel free to reach out and I'm happy to help accommodate you. How many meetings should you expect on the Hill Day? On average, you should expect 4 to 5 meetings. Some might have more, some might have less, depending on their group and availability of members of Congress and their staff. Another good question I always get is, can we get extra information packets to drop off at the offices that we didn't get to visit? And the answer is always absolutely. The more people we can get info to, the better. And you just let me know on Tuesday if you're planning to do that, and we will accommodate. Will we be given notes on the members of Congress, such as what committees there are or their stance on our issues? On Monday afternoon, when you're given your schedules, you'll also be given bios and information for the members you'll be meeting, so you'll be very prepared. There will also be the opportunity to get some lapel pins and bracelets, or swag, as the kids say. So you'll get that in your welcome bags, but you'll also be able to grab some more Tuesday morning. Is it okay to leave personal business cards? Yes, and I encourage it because it is important to be able to start a dialogue with a member of Congress's staff after you leave D.C. because remember, they work for you. Do we choose which breakout sessions we attend? Yes, you are welcome to go to any breakout sessions you'd like. You can also leave a breakout session mid-breakout and go to a different one. Are there multiple advocates in each meeting? That's a question we usually get from folks who are new, and I want to assure everybody who's new that you will have a group of advocates with you in every meeting you go to. You will not be taking a meeting by yourself. Each meeting will run about 20 to 30 minutes, like I mentioned, so it's really important that we work the day before on getting your personal story down to about 2 minutes so that we can make sure we make the ask of the meeting. And is there a summit hashtag to help us see each other's posts? And to the 4 millennials in the room who asked that question, I say yes, we do. It is hashtag #ZeroSummit2018. So we're going to pause here for questions. We're going to give 30 questions. We've got, or 30 seconds. We've got a few, but we're going to let some more come in. Good question from Robin is, are we assigned to our own congressional delegations? For the most part, yes, especially depending upon what state you're in. For instance, if you're from Missouri, we have so many Missouri advocates that you'll probably be broken up into 2 Missouri groups. But if you're from a state like Wisconsin, where we only have a couple people, we will group you in with some of the surrounding states like Minnesota or Illinois, etc. Another good question from Susie, the elder of the group. Some advocates have 0 business cards as well as personal ones. Should the 0 cards be offered too, or 0 in lieu of personal? And I would say that's up to you. Whatever business cards you'd like to leave. All right, we are going to move on to our legislative priorities. If you have any other questions that we have already moved past, please feel free to ask. Real quickly, a question just came in from Charlie. Charlie wants to know if he's leaving Tuesday night at 8:55. Can you leave our bags somewhere when he's on the Hill? And the answer is yes. You'll either be able to leave your bags at the hotel or Cornerstone's office, which will be right on the Hill. I will get back to you with a specific answer, but you should be able to do at least one of those. But I think the better option would be Cornerstone's office because it'll be right on the Hill. And now I will turn it over to Drew.
Okay, so you all should have received a welcome, or I should say a pre-arrival packet from Matt. If you haven't received that, please let him know. It has a lot of this information and a really detailed dive into each of these topics that you can read, as well as the administrative information that Matt went over. So I know it's late, so I'll try to go through this quickly, but this is your second exposure after the pre-arrival packet to the policy agenda. Our 2019 legislative priorities are protecting and growing federal prostate cancer research funding. Specifically, the most important is at the Prostate Cancer Research Program at the Department of Defense. And there's also a line item for prostate cancer at the CDC that we need to protect because it's been eliminated the last 3 years in the President's budget. The other important tenet of our policy agenda is screening and access to that screening. So we are fighting for more transparency and accountability with the United States Preventive Services Task Force, and we'll get into why this task force is important and what we're trying to do to hold them more accountable in a moment. So first, let's get into the Prostate Cancer Research Program at the Department of Defense. The program is part of what's called the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program at the Department of Defense. And they are a very strategic organization. The funding has been around since breast cancer got a line item in, I believe, 1996. Prostate cancer was closely behind, started with $45 million in 1997, and $1.53 billion has been appropriated to prostate cancer research since the inception of the program.
Hey Drew, what does appropriated mean?
So appropriations are the money that Congress gives to the other branches. So in this case, well, really the executive branch. So they are saying that we as Congress, in our appropriating making power, say that $90 million can go to the prostate cancer research program at the Department of Defense. And so they'll also appropriate X amount of dollars for aircraft carriers or other radars, for example, but they have to appropriate the money to specific places. And this happens throughout the entire government, not just in defense.
Sounds like that word is just a synonym for allocate then, kind of.
Sure, yeah. We'll look at the thesaurus after this call.
Thanks, Drew.
Okay. So if you can go back for 1 second. The program is extremely important to the community. It produces results, and some of the most tangible results of the program are the last three drugs for advanced prostate cancers, Zytiga, Xtandi, and Xgeva. All of their research can be linked back to research that was funded by grants through the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program at the Department of Defense. So this program produces research that eventually leads to drugs coming to market and advanced diagnostics and hopefully some better screening and diagnosis techniques in the future as well. So the history of the program is that until last year, we were stuck at $80 million, and we finally got an increase to $90 million, which is important for two reasons. One, because it allows us to fund more, us meaning taxpayers and the federal government, us to fund more research ideas, which is important as we're looking for breakthroughs. And two, it helps us keep up with medical inflation, so the cost of conducting that research. And that $10 million increase last year was the confluence of years and years and years of people like yourselves, and some of you on the call, I see very familiar names, have been coming for many years. But it's the compounding effect of going to the Hill and writing emails, writing letters, doing phone calls for years and years and years to get that $10 million increase. So your participation and continued persistence is really important, and it results in actual therapies that come to market, and it results in more research specifically for prostate cancer. Okay, so getting into the details, a little recap of what happened last year. So the House of Representatives passed $90 million in their defense appropriations bill. On the other side, the Senate approved its version of the appropriations bill at $64 million. They come together in what's called a conference, and in the conference, the Senate receded to the House, which means the Senate said, okay, House, we're going to take your number that was in your bill and throw out our number. And so we got the $90 million increase in March 2017 when the budget was finally finalized. This year, as you guys may have seen in the news, there's been 2 government shutdowns and multiple continuing resolutions. And a continuing resolution, for those of you who don't know, is basically the government saying, hey, we don't have our act together yet, we don't have a new budget, so we will continue to fund the government at the same level as last year. And so everybody kind of just assumes that for now they're getting the same funding, they're operating the same funding as last year, so no new hires, no new projects, nothing like that can move forward, including if there's an increase into a research budget. So we definitely want them to get this fixed. The government's fiscal year actually starts in October, so October 2017 was when 2018 started, and we still don't have a 2018 budget. So it's kind of sad. I mean, imagine if you called your mortgage company and you said, hey, I don't have my act together, and I think I just want to, or maybe called the government and said, I just want to pay the taxes I paid last year. I haven't really gotten around to getting my taxes together for this year. So we'll just do a continuing resolution. Is that okay? And of course they would say, no, we're gonna charge you interest and penalize you. But anyway, that's the situation with our federal government. So we're still, the long and short of it is, we're still waiting to hear how much money will be appropriated for 2018. So just to also set the stage for the environment around this program, there are members of Congress as well as outside fiscally conservative groups who believe that the money that's appropriated to the Department of Defense should just be used, or solely used for warfighters and diseases that, or conditions that impact the warfighter. And you know, that position is held by Senator McCain, for example, and he's in charge of the Armed Services Committee. So his job is to really look out for the armed services. And so you can kind of sympathize maybe with his position, but the fact is that this line item for prostate cancer has been around since 1997, and there is no mechanism right now, or no proposed mechanism, to move that line item anywhere else in the federal government, including NIH. So we have no mechanism to move it, and even if we did, we don't have anywhere else from the federal government's budget to take that $90 million and put it somewhere else. So that's why we have to protect it fiercely right now until someday or some way there's a new mechanism for moving that funding, as well as the method of funding that funding elsewhere into the government. So let's see. We're moving a little quick. That's okay. Just quickly, I want to explain the difference between potentially NIH funding and the funding at the DoD. And the main thing to remember, or the main way I remember it and explain it when I'm on the Hill, is the NIH and the National Cancer Institute that falls under it is an academic type of research body. They just simply score research in a formula, in an academic way, and whatever the best research that is ranked, that's what the research they do. So theoretically, if the best research that came in to National Cancer Institute was all for bladder cancer, and they wanted to spend $100 million on bladder cancer, they could do that if all the research ranked in a certain way. The program that we're fighting for, and you're fighting for, at the Department of Defense is different. The Department of Defense identifies holes in prostate cancer treatment, diagnosis, screening, and they say, all right, we're going to attack those holes, just like you would expect from our military. So they say, we're going to attack those holes, and in order to attack those holes, here's the kind of research we're looking for. And then they call for research proposals, and then they have peer reviewers, some of which are advocates that you'll be able to meet at the summit, who peer review that research and say, yes, as a patient, as someone who's going through this or has gone through this, I want to put my vote in or not put my vote in, that this type of research advances what we're all looking for, which is to end pain and suffering from prostate cancer. So very different from NIH in the way they approach it. And again, or I should mention that at NIH, you do not designate specific funding for specific diseases. So this $90 million is ours to protect. Like I said, there's no mechanism to move it anywhere, and even if there was, there's no money to ensure that it would go to prostate cancer. So I hope that's helpful for you to distinguish why this program is fought for so fiercely and why it's our main tenet of our policy platform. Okay, so what will we be asking for? We are asking for $100 million, a $10 million increase for fiscal year 2019 Department of Defense appropriations, and we're also asking for congressmen and senators to oppose any effort to undermine or eliminate the congressionally directed medical research program, and specifically the prostate cancer research program under the National Defense Authorization Act. And I'll just quickly say that, I apologize if I'm going on, that the appropriators appropriate the money, right? They allocate the money like Matt said. The authorizers, Senator McCain's group, authorizes how that money is going to be used. And so that's why he's able to say in his bill, in the authorizing bill, that no, you have to have a militarily relevant disease in order to apply for a grant. The grant has to be for a military relevant disease, and you have to go through these audit procedures, and you have to go through these procurement procedures just like any other defense contractor would. He can put all that stuff in his bill because he's an authorizer. And the appropriators just say, look, here's the money. We're giving you this money. And then the authorizers actually set policies like that. So I hope that distinguishes why we have to fight on two fronts. We have to ask for the money in the appropriations bill, and then we have to defend how it's going to be used in the authorizing bill. Okay, sorry. Hope that helps. So what we'll be asking when we're on the Hill is $100 million, and specifically we're going to ask for congressmen in the House to sign on to the King-Bishop letter. And that's not referring to chess pieces. Those are two congressmen, Congressman Peter King from New York and Congressman Sanford Bishop from Georgia. And then later on in the year, because we haven't seen the Senate number yet, we'll be sending out emails for you guys to contact your senators for them to sign on to the Crapo-Menendez letter in the Senate. But that number will likely not be out by the time you get to Washington. Okay, a second major tenet of our policy platform is access to screening and prevention. And the policy issue here is that a volunteer task force, the United States Preventive Services Task Force, was tied to coverage and access for preventive screening services when the Affordable Care Act was rolled out in 2010. Basically, if this task force gives an A or a B rating, which says this screening has more benefits than harms, then insurers have to cover it, number one, and number two, they cannot charge a copay or cost sharing for the patient to them. So that's great, right? Our community wants screening. We want to catch this early because we know it has an almost 100% 5-year survival rate if it's caught when it's still in the prostate. So our situation, unfortunately, though, is that the USPSTF has a D rating, which means it causes more harm than good, and they recommend that no man get a PSA screening, a prostate-specific antigen screening, no matter what their age. Now, last year, after the summit, last April, they came out with a draft recommendation with a C rating that said there's slightly, potentially more benefit than harm. And while we still don't recommend every man get it, we recommend that men between 55 and 69 talk to their doctor about it. But for men 70 and above, we recommend they don't get it. And there's no carve-out, at least in the draft, for high-risk groups like African Americans or men with a family history, or veterans. And so there's still more work to be done. And part of the work that we believe needs to be done is to hold this task force more accountable for how they evaluate research and for how they evaluate the input of outside groups like Zero or the American Urological Association or citizens like any of you guys on the phone who want to make comments. So we will be asking for Congress to be a co-sponsor to the USPSTF Transparency and Accountability Act, and that act helps us by ensuring that a medical oncologist and or urologist is part of the decision process when they're talking about how to grade this screening. Right now, it's totally made up of primary care practitioners like obstetricians or pediatricians or epidemiologists, and we want to make sure that in our case there's a urologist, a medical oncologist, or several who are weighing in on the utility of the prostate-specific antigen. It'll also help us by codifying the process by which they make their decision, and so it'll allow us specific and transparent venues in order for us to make our comments, and it'll require them to respond to our comments. So if we submit a certain piece of research that we want them to consider, we will have an avenue to do that, and then they will have to respond to that research and tell us why or why not they're including it. Same with, for example, the AUA guidelines, the American Urological Association guidelines. If they submit those and they say, look, this is different from your recommendation, or you should consider this, they have to respond to that if we get this bill passed. So,
a really good question was just asked, and I wanted to interrupt you because I think it's really pertinent to what we're talking about right now. Robin wants to know who appoints this task force.
Yeah, so there's a sub-agency called AHRQ, the Agency for Health Research and Quality, I believe, and they are involved in the appointment process as well as other task force members,
as well as the HHS secretary. But the issue is that the law mandates that it's all primary care doctors.
Correct. Yep. Good question. Okay. So moving on from the USPSTF, there is a line item at the Centers for Disease Control for under the Comprehensive Cancer Control Program. It's a somewhat small item at $13.4 million, but this money goes down into the communities to help with education about prostate cancer and screening for prostate cancer, and it's been eliminated from the President's budget for the last 3 years under 2 administrations, and we need to keep protecting it and fighting for it because it is community funding that is utilized especially for disparate communities to help educate about prostate cancer and screening for prostate cancer. So we will be asking to maintain that funding under the Comprehensive Cancer Control Program, under the Labor, Health and Human Services and Education Appropriations Bill, and you'll be asking members of Congress to include the program in their communications to the HHS Appropriations Committee. So, summarizing, we are asking for an increase to the prostate cancer research program of $10 million to $100 million. We're asking them to sign on, the House members to sign on to the King Bishop Dear Colleague letter, and for the CDC, we're asking them to protect and maintain the $13.2 million under the Comprehensive Cancer Control Program for prostate cancer, and we're asking members to co-sponsor the USPSTF Transparency and Accountability Act. You have all this in your packets. You have seen it and heard it tonight, and then you will see it and hear it twice more at the summit, and then you will go up to the hill and you'll do your best. The main issue is that you get in front of them, you try to relate your story to the research that's being done or the importance of screening for prostate cancer. You try to relate your story very concisely to these issues and make a point, and then when you go back home, you try to maintain a relationship with the congressional office as well as the local Senate offices. And it's a matter of persistence and determination, and the advocates who have been around for a while can attest to that it gets results, and you new advocates are starting down an exciting road that hopefully you'll be with for a long time. Let's see, Billy had a good question. Will we be provided with these bullet background papers to present to the congressional members? So yes, you will have a leave behind packet. You'll have a leave behind packet that will have all of these bullet points in there. So even if you totally forget everything and and let's say you meet with a staffer who her father or his father had prostate cancer, and you just tell each other stories for 20 minutes, and all of a sudden the meeting's over and you forget all this stuff. It's in that packet. You're just going to leave it behind, and we will do follow-up on it. So it's no worries. You can't mess it up. Just getting in front of these people and telling them that prostate cancer is important is a lot of the job. Let's see. So how does Ross has a question that is pertinent to what we're doing and is being asked by some members of Congress. How does the PCRP research benefit our armed forces? So the PCRP research benefits our armed forces, one, by ensuring that our men and women and families are in the right health and state of mind to fight. So our board member, Paul Taylor, was a lieutenant colonel in the Army. And he was meant to deploy with the 101st Airborne. For those of you, that's the group that was in Band of Brothers, a famous group in the military. So he was supposed to deploy with the 101st Airborne as a lieutenant colonel. He'd been training with them for years to be a leader, and he was unable to go because he wasn't able to get his Lupron shots over in Afghanistan. So the impact of that is that you have someone in a leadership position training with their unit for several years, and we're in a wartime environment, and he can't go because he can't get the medicine that he needs to stay in the fight when he's overseas. And so the research that's being done helps keep our men in the fight. It helps families at home. For example, let's say you have a combat medic who her husband is at home. If he's has prostate cancer, and she's over in Afghanistan or Iraq, worried about him, then she's not in the mental state of readiness that we need her there for, because she's worried about her husband at home. So the research programs for not only PCRP, but breast cancer and other cancers, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, the better state of our health, the more ready, both mentally and physically, our warfighters are. And in addition to that, the research that's being done provides military doctors with better techniques and technology in order for their readiness when they need to treat soldiers on the battlefield. So like I said, Paul couldn't get his Lupron over in Afghanistan. But what if there was a new way that was developed and you could keep a leader like Paul in the fight and commanding the troops he trains with if the doctors had the tools and the training and the technology to be able to do that?
Another important thing to mention is that studies have shown that there is a higher rate of prostate cancer for active duty military as well as veterans, especially Vietnam veterans who were exposed in Vietnam to Agent Orange. Many studies have shown, and we reference some studies in the PCRP backgrounder that talks about how Vietnam veterans who were exposed to Agent Orange have a higher rate and more aggressive disease for prostate cancer.
It looks like Mary just asked that question as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then
nice thinking, Mary.
So off that topic a little bit, Charlie had a question. Can we order some business cards with the Zero logo?
So when it comes to business cards, we, as you can imagine, have a lot of advocates who ask that. For now, we are not doing what we used to do, which is order and ship them to you. However, if you would like a Zero business card, if you can send me an email, I can have one made up for you, a mock-up on a PDF made, so that way you can go into a Kinko's or a Staples, you can show that to them, and they'll be able to print it that way for you. Unfortunately, we can't at this moment cover that for you, but it should only be about $10 for 200 business cards or something like that.
Okay, so here's a great question from John. For the appointments on the Hill, it sounds like you all have prearranged times and I imagine staff contacts. If we have contacts in a particular office, should we relay to you? He's specifically talking about Tester and Dane. So the answer to that is yes, please let us know your specific connections to any offices, anyone you might have met with back in your state or in your district. Let us know if you've ever met the congressman or the senator at a function, or if there's any sort of family or business connection. We will pass that all along to our consultants who are making the meetings so that they will pass that on to staff because you never know what may trigger a member meeting, and you never know what may trigger a chief of staff to come into a meeting as well. So yes, please send us your personal connections and contacts so that we can utilize them.
Another thing that we'll also go over in more detail on Monday afternoon is that every group will be given a sheet of paper where somebody will take notes about what happens in the meetings. You can also indicate your personal connections to the office there. I would also recommend that if you have a really personal connection and maybe you've emailed with that person before, nothing hurts to just email them and let them know you're coming. Just to give them a heads up. You never know what that might do to benefit. Another quick question that we just got about the business cards is, do we email Drew or Matt about that? And the answer is you could email me. You could also email Drew, but you should email me, and my email is matt@zerocancer.org, and I will put that in the chat for everyone. And I'll also give you Drew's email address.
Okay, and then Kara asks, is it okay to add something to the folders that is a story behind someone who's battled prostate cancer? She has a short story about her dad, who we unfortunately lost this year, with pictures of her dad and to put a name to the prostate cancer. And yes, if you have a little a vignette or something that you would like to write up, please feel free to add that into the Leave Behind folders. Remember that these are short meetings, 20 to 30 minutes, and you want to allow time to do your ask and to share a little bit of your story, and also for the other advocates to share a little bit of their story. But so if you can only share a little bit of your story and you want to have a full story in the Leave Behind, please feel free to do that. Okay.
And also points to Drew for working in vignette.
Yeah. All right, so it's 9:41. I know it's late, especially for the East Coast. If you have any more questions, please type them in now. We really, can't express how much we appreciate you guys taking time out of your evening to do this little preparation beforehand, and then obviously the time out of your lives to fly, drive, take the train. I don't think anyone's taking any boats, but travel to D.C. and take time out of your lives to do this. There are men sitting at home. There are men who have prostate cancer and don't know it, and there are men who are going to develop prostate cancer in the future who don't know it, that you are benefiting by sacrificing this time out of your lives. So thank you for attending tonight, and we really can't wait to see you guys in Washington. So it doesn't look like there are any more questions. If you think of something, please feel free to email us. Remember, if you have any topic ideas that you didn't see, Matt's going to send out those topics via email, but for the advocate-led roundtables on Sunday night, if you have other ideas, let me know. But otherwise, yeah, we just can't wait to see you all in a couple of weeks.